Toph's top 5 because 10 is too many. Toph's top 5 because Stubbs is too busy. Toph's top 5, I don't know what he's up to, but he's clearly busy. So let's talk about some tunes, cause it's Toph's top 5. Yeah! Yeah. Hoo, 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 hoo. Greetings. Greetings and salutations. And welcome to episode 3 here of Toph's Top 5. And one of the semi-interesting things about this, if we to get in the sense for a little variety here, right? This last episode we did a little Steely Dan records, and in episode 1 we did Prince, and the quick parallels between the episode 3 artist Madonna and Prince are pretty vast. They both kind of came up through the same era. They both were considered, sort of the king and queen of pop at one point. You would think that their stage name was fake, but for both of them, it was their real name. Her actual name was Madonna Louise Ciccone, just like, Prince's first name was actually Prince. And most notably, they were both giant preverts. We're talking about a couple of pretty sexual, pretty pervy artists here, broke a lot of barriers in terms of, that whole thing. But, also both Midwesterners. Prince came up in Minneapolis, and Madonna Louise Ciccone came up about, 40 minutes from where I currently sit in the northern suburbs of Detroit. Now, she did not grow up in Detroit. If anybody makes that claim, they're casting way too wide of a net as in terms of what Detroit actually is. But she is a bona fide Michigander, whether she, admits it much these days or not, because she's since, copped a lot of, like at one point she had a fake British accent. I think she was pretending she was from Britain and, or New York or LA or, wherever else she's kind of staged at certain points to be from. She's actually a Midwestern Michigander. So, another parallel to Prince. She grew up in the Pontiac area. It's Oakland County, which is actually a very wealthy, affluent area in the North Detroit suburbs. It's an area a lot of the, auto executives used to reside, and a lot of money up there. So this is not, she did not grow up in the tough streets of 8 Mile, or anything like that. But we're going to get to the top 5 for this artist. And there's certainly, a vast catalog and, many different eras that you can look at. Most notably, the top 5 come during her prime. There was some decent output, in the 90s and even in the early 2000s. But really, since then, her output has been pretty awful. She looks terrible. And actually, just this week, she put out a song with that guy, what's his name? Sam Smith or Simon or whatever, essentially a disgrace to music. But she partnered with that guy, and they put out a song that's just horrendous. So, it's I think in the quest to continue to be edgy and relevant, she has gone on to sort of make herself look kind of stupid. But, at this time of her prime and her heyday, I don't know that there was an artist that was much bigger. But let's start with an album worth mentioning. What do you say?
I will now sell 5 copies of the 3 EPs by the Beta Band. Do it.
All right. The album worth mentioning is a band that actually we covered on the Big Podcast at one point. That's the Mars Volta. They put out a new record in 2022 called, wait for it now, the Mars Volta. And it was a much more stripped down, simplified. They were kind of doing songs that were, 3-4 minutes. And for their standards, pretty stripped down. Well, they went even further stripped down with this release, which is going to completely butcher the Spanish here. Que Dios te maldiga mi corazón, which means God curses you, my sweetheart. Yeah? These guys are upbeat as always, aren't they? But the cool thing about this is it's an acoustic version of their 2022 album. So it's basically all the same songs, but acoustic versions. I like what these guys are doing. Most bands start off simple and then sort of move towards a more progressive output. These guys did the opposite. Their early work was very complex. We covered Francis the Mute on Two Twins and an Album. And I mean, there's some insanely complex musical things happening there. And, what they've kind of gotten to now after breaking up and getting back together and sort of, regrouping and creatively is a place that is much more simple. It's pretty neat. And so I think putting out an acoustic version of their album that came out last year is kind of a neat sign. So anyway, Mars Volta, Que Dios te maldiga mi corazón. And I probably just said that so blatantly wrong and blatantly American, but it's the best I got. So anyway, check that one out. Madonna, as we noted, she grew up in the suburbs of Detroit, had some issues with the old dad. Her dad, divorced her mother and then married and sort of ran off with the housekeeper, kind of the timeless story of that. Extremely intelligent, straight A student, got a dance scholarship at the University of Michigan. And artistically, I mean, clearly she had some talent in terms of songwriting and composition. I don't know if I'd call her a songwriter, but she was a master collaborator. Certainly knew, and who knows at first if the record companies were smart about who to team her up with, but eventually that certainly became something where she had some carte blanche to work with who she wanted to work with, producers and songwriters and composers, and always made very, very good collaboration decisions. I mean, it always seemed like she found the right person or persons to collaborate with. And I think that that's part of what defines her as an artist. I don't know that she was one that could just start from scratch and write an entire album and execute an entire album without some help. So, Madonna in a lot of ways was like a group, even though it was packaged as a solo artist and she certainly was at the forefront. Very often you were getting a lot of support, whether it was from one other person or a few other people. And we'll touch on that some as we get through the top 5. So fairly big fan of her classic work. I think what she's doing in her more modern era or recent era has been kind of sort of lame and kind of a reach for relevance. But during this time, the 80s and early 90s, and even some of the stuff, which we'll start with, actually, that's a bit later, there was nobody that could kind of nail it better and capture the mainstream and keep herself in the conversation, better than Madonna Louise Ciccone. So what do you say we get to it? Top 5. All right, we're going to start with number 5, which, as I kind of touched on, is as late in her era as we're going to get. The great Nubs, who's very busy, by the way. He's a busy guy, so we'll just acknowledge that right away. But Nubs, well before we started podcasting and these type of things, one of his first jobs out of college was as a music journalist for a local paper, actually on the other side of Madonna's suburb, downriver, which is South Detroit, if you will. And he used to write a music column and review albums. And I remember back in November 2005, Nubs writing a review for Madonna's Confessions on a Dance Floor and noting that it was the ultimate Buy Your Girlfriend CD. This is back when we we didn't even think about spouses. We just thought about girlfriends. The word wife was not in the equation, but Nubs basically wrote in his column, this is a cool album. And if you want to buy your girlfriend an album for the holiday season here, this is the one to do it. It's the ultimate. And I kind of agree with him.
Number 5. Number 5.
Please, call me Johnny 5.
Johnny, you have taken a name for yourself?
From Confessions on a Dance Floor. The first track, number 5 on Toph's top 5 for Madonna is Sorry. Okay, so this album is pretty cool. It is... So the collaborator here was Stuart Price. Huge within the, electronic dance music scene. I believe he was out of the UK. And the album is structured like a DJ set. So each song runs into the next. Everything's fairly upbeat. There's some other pretty cool songs on here. I actually really like the album. I think it hit at the right moment. It had the right tone. She and Stuart Price were a very good pairing. And Sorry is number 5, track 3 on the album. So yeah, it's a cool record. I think it's one that is a great top to bottom listen because it really does feel like one collective, and it is DJ style where the songs run into each other. It was kind of cool at this time for her to do a fun album because she had put out American Life a couple years before, which had a couple hits and all that, but I don't know, the tone of it was like very political, kind of dark, and everyone was kind of doing a lot of politicking around that time. And I think what she kind of decided is let's get with Stuart Price and put out something that's fun and upbeat and danceable. And Confessions on a Dance Floor hit it. So that is number 5, Sorry, off of Confessions on a Dance Floor. Let's get to the next one.
4. Fine shot. I should have yelled 2.
All right, this record has 3 songs in Toph's top 5. Now, with a catalog this vast, it's probably going to be fairly unusual for that to be the case, but clearly 1986's True Blue is my favorite album. 3 tunes appear on the top 5, starting with number 4 here with Live to Tell. The song's awesome. Most of the stuff I liked of hers was fairly minimalist, right? Like that was the cool thing about Madonna's music is it never was overly layered, which meant that instrumentation and these things really sort of shine through because it never felt muddy. It always felt like whether it was the drum tracks, whether it was the synthesizer keyboard stuff or the other instrumentation, that it always stuck out the way it needed to. I thought her stuff was always really well produced. She did this song for a movie with Sean Penn, who she was married to at the time. Can you frickin' imagine that dynamic, that relationship, Madonna and Sean Penn? Really shocked it didn't work out. But this was for the movie At Close Range. of the things that's super cool about this, which I didn't know until recently, is that Madonna recorded a demo. They were kind of working on different song ideas for this movie. And one of the producers brought this to her, and she put down a demo vocal, after kind of finalizing the lyrics. And they kept trying to re-record it, but everyone involved with the production just really liked what she did on the demo. And that's what you're hearing. The final recording, actually, this is her original first take demo vocals for the song. So that's part of why it's super raw. Like, it's not overly produced, and it's really stripped down in terms of effects and those things. And I think that's part of what makes it good, is it does sound like, somebody who's singing this in a very raw, stripped down fashion. So again, not trying to do too much. Great interludes, great sections, and Live to Tell comes in at number 4. Number 3 also comes in off True Blue. So Live to Tell was track 4. This is track 7. So you're kind of on side B here. And this was the 5th single. So there were 5 singles in the top 5 Billboard charts from this album, True Blue. So pretty amazing. Number 3, La Isla Bonita. Again, not trying to do too much here musically, right? They could have gone crazy with layers and effects. You have some Spanish guitar. You've got keyboards. You've got a pretty straightforward drum track. Love the vocal. Now, interesting about this, Patrick Leonard, who she collaborated with heavily around this time, co-wrote this song. This was actually offered up by Leonard first to Michael Jackson, who listened to the instrumental and wasn't feeling it. Apparently he and Quincy Jones at the time wanted something that sounded like Sade, something a little more chill. And they turned this down, and then it went over to Madonna, and it turned into this track. Have a hell of a voice. I mean, I think one of the things, she was such a performer and such a signal sender artistically that you often overlook her vocal abilities. But, she was pretty damn good and was able to, outside of the studio for the most part, pull that off as well. And you saw later, with Evita and some of those things, she was really kind of flexing her, vocal form. But I think she does it on this song and brings something to a track that makes it pretty neat. Great middle section here. So La Isla Bonita coming in at number 3, and don't look now. We still have one more song off True Blue to go. But in the meantime, we switch to a different album for number 2.
Utah, give me 2.
We're going to fast forward a little bit here to 1992. And really an album that it was kind of like just when you felt like Madonna was getting sort of mainstream, because she had actually just starred in the movie A League of Their Own, as All the Way May, great part. And it was kind of like, oh, is she going to become a movie star? Is she going to go mainstream? And then was like, she was basically like, screw all of you for even thinking that. And I'm going to put out a book called Sex. And I'm going to put out an album called Erotica. And number 2 on Toph's Top 5 is track 10 from said album. This is Rain. The Erotica album, actually, I think I like the cover. I like that there's a parental advisory. I always like that. And it sort of takes you in a lot of different directions. It's a cool, pretty dynamic record, and Rain is probably the most straightforward song. There's a lot of this was sort of a compliment to the Sex book. So there's a lot in there that kind of takes on that vibe, but this is a little bit more of something, that certainly came through as a single. But yeah, this was around a time that she was, she had just done A League of Their Own, and she was about to star in Body of Evidence, which was like a poor man's Basic Instinct, a year after Basic Instinct, basically Madonna doing the same stuff as Sharon Stone in that movie. So, I mean, it's worth the watch, but it's not a particularly good movie, but she gave the middle finger to going too mainstream with this record and this Sex coffee table book.
When you looked into my eyes and you said goodbye, could you see my tears?
So Rain off of Erotica comes in at number 2, leaving us with only one song remaining.
It's a good thing. It's the best.
You're simply the best. You can do this. You can do this. You can do. We'll make the best of what's around. The best. The best. The best. The best.
You are my number 1.
The third song off this record to make Toph's Top 5 number 1 is Open Your Heart. Every section of this song is awesome. Produced perfectly. The verses build into a pre-chorus that is memorable, and then the chorus just kind of, no pun intended, opens up to something that just has a lot of great flow and rhythm and direction to it. Perfectly composed and produced song. Plus, I mean, you got to be a sucker for those fake, 80s horns. I mean, come on. The Madonna obviously made a pretty big dent in the MTV world, and the video of this was the one with she and the kid who like sneaks into the peep show, and then he and Madonna end up like hanging out the rest of the night. It's pretty interesting video, particularly when you're 6 years old. It's funny, the kid in the video, his name is Felix Howard. And he would go on to become a songwriter, but most notably a very successful A&R guy. So he's like in the music biz. This kid who played like Madonna's underage, friend who stuck into the peep show in the video. He wrote songs for Amy Winehouse and Sia So, who knew this kid was going to get in the biz later? So Open Your Heart comes in at number 1. Rounding out Toph's top 5. A cool middle section there, by the way. But we just don't have time. Don't have time. We got things to do. We're busy like nubs, Recapping the top 5. Number 5 off of Confessions on a Dance Floor was Sorry. Number 4 off True Blue, Live to Tell. Number 3 off True Blue, La Isla Bonita. Number 2 off Erotica was Rain. And number 1 also off True Blue was Open Your Heart. So I think if nothing else you can take away from this is go give True Blue a listen, because, one hell of an album. So I think that's a wrap. And now we've covered, the man pop icon of the 80s and 90s ish, Midwesterner with a name that sounds like a stage name but wasn't. And now we've covered the lady pop queen of the 80s and 90s from the Midwest, who also has a name that sounds like a stage name, but it's her real name. So we'll call that a wrap, and the conclusion of Toph's Top 5 for Madonna. So that's a wrap on our 3rd episode. We'll be back with another one shortly. Y'all take care. Thank you.